Hello there. Welcome into a Friday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the new Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. Only a half a show today. Air Force hockey coming up at 4:30, but a full amount of the effort. And yes, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way. I've got hockey, I've got football, I've got soccer. And I'd love to get your thoughts. 719-24/7. 1313 is the number to interact. And we got more hockey with Dave Toller coming up at the bottom of the hour. He'll preview this weekend series Air Force has against Bentley. If you haven't been paying attention, the Falcons are rolling right now. So we'll talk with him. But I want to start with the Avs last night, because playing the Washington Capitals in both matchups of the season between these two teams in a relatively short time, there's not a lot that has changed. That was the first game that Duran and Nichushkin were back, and Miles Wood as well. Thankfully, the Avs haven't gotten anybody, or weren't without anybody that they had against the Capitals. So you wonder about, if you play a team first month of the season and then you play them 3 months later, I mean, how much has changed and all that kind of stuff. With this turnaround from one Capitals game to the next, not much has changed. So it's easy to see the differences in the two games. And I would say there weren't many. Washington, even without Alexander Ovechkin, so I guess something changed for them of significance. But they were still extremely dangerous. They looked every bit the team they were when they beat the Avs at Ball Arena. This is the highest scoring team in the league. It's also a team that's very difficult to score against, because they love to take away time and space. Avs scored 2 goals just like they did last time. The difference in the game last night was Alexander Georgiev. He made the difference between the Avs winning and losing that hockey game. Because even without Alexander Ovechkin, the Washington Capitals generated a lot of grade A scoring opportunities. How many breakaways did they have in that game? 3, 4, 5? From the Avs' perspective, they didn't play a whole lot different. They didn't play a whole lot better at any position other than goalie. Last matchup, it was Justus Onanen in there, and Jared Bednar was very critical of his play. And Georgiev gets in there, and he was great. Just flat out great. They needed him to make some difficult saves, and he made them. And rare has the occasion been where there are games that Alexander Georgiev has been solid in, more recently than the beginning of the season, certainly. But to say Alexander Georgiev was the difference and probably the best player on the Colorado Avalanche, that's different. And as Jared Bednar points out, it's kind of like the way he's seen from Georgiev, not just last night, but many nights recently.
I liked his last few starts. I mean, he's won 3 in a row before he, got his injury, and now he's back. So I've liked the way he's been playing for quite some time.
And he played extremely well against Winnipeg. Kept the Avs in that game. Avs just couldn't muster anything against Connor Hellebuck. So to say that this has been night and day or a 180-degree turnaround from Alexander Georgiev would be at least stating the obvious, if not a gross understatement. But I find myself still not totally buying in. And I think there's always going to be that for me a little bit, because I've seen too much more of lackluster play from Alexander Georgiev during the regular season than I've seen performances like last night. So I always feel like maybe the other shoe is going to drop. And I don't know, maybe there's, because I bought into Alexander Georgiev in the playoffs last year. So perhaps there will be a time. But I just wonder if Alexander Georgiev is a player that needs the heat turned up. And that's what Jared Bednar has done to him. Right? Bringing in Capo Kakinen, giving Justus Onanen a lot of run, and sitting Alexander Georgiev. He's not a scratch because he's still available to play, but benching him. The playoffs, he was really good. But after a disastrous game one, where there was a real question of whether they should just replace him because he was so bad. There are athletes like that. They need the push. They need to feel the pressure a little bit to get the best out of them. And I think that's the environment that Jared Bednar has fostered now. Georgiev has seen Justus Onanen just like you and I have. He sees what Onanen is capable of. And at his age, there's reason to believe that there's a little bit more, at least, to tap into. And you would think playing in a contract year would be enough. But it clearly wasn't to start the season. And none of this is, I mean, it's positive the way he responds. You like that, but it's not great that he needs to be pushed like this. Contract year with a viable replacement on the roster, having been benched for a period of time. You know, all of these things that are going on to get the best out of Alexander Georgiev. You would want a goaltender to be a little bit more internally driven, I think, and not need so much external stimuli, if you will, to get him going. But it just looks like that's what he needs. And the good news is the Avs are providing it. Whereas last year, I don't know that they could have. Certainly the contract situation was different. Justus Onanen was in a different place. He certainly, from a support standpoint, had more last year than he did certainly to start the year. And that's probably also part of it. Last night, not really. Last night, Georgiev stood on his own, despite some significant breakdowns from the Avs. But you look at this stretch since he was brought back off the bench. And yeah, they have more guys back. And that helps. But as long as the Avs can keep putting that pressure on him, keep creating that environment, that at any moment Alexander Georgiev could be sitting on the bench in a baseball cap for a week or 2 weeks, maybe you're going to get the best out of him. Right? You don't love the number of things that go into the process, but the result you like. And last night he was superb. And Jared Bednar talked about that's a big win. And you look up and this team has won 5 of their last 6 games. Even right before that, I thought they played very well against Winnipeg. They were just Connor Hellebuck was spectacular. Avs are getting it going for sure. And this is a difficult road trip that they're on. Caps are a good team. And their goaltender made the difference. That being Alexander Georgiev. Take your thoughts on the win last night. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we are way less than 24 hours away from the Switchbacks hosting Rhode Island FC in the USL Championship Final. You will hear from the head coach of the Switchbacks on the eve of the biggest match in franchise history next.
and ultimately then it's trying to have control of it. But it's a final, and finals aren't very pretty the majority of the time. So we know, and the group have shown that they can do numerous different things depending on what the game throws at them, and it's up to us then to figure out what is the game giving us, and how do we try and get control in that moment.
And that's something that I talked about earlier this week, based on what a question I asked James Chambers at the press conference leading up to Saturday's game. The ability of this Switchbacks team to find success, or at least hold their own, even when things aren't playing to their strengths. And last week was a perfect example of it. And Chambers mentioned it in there. The possession that Las Vegas had, 70% of the possession for the game. That's not generally how the Switchbacks succeed, is allowing a team to dominate possession, especially one as talented as Vegas. But the fact that they were able to hold their own, and they got some big saves from Christian Herrera that allowed them to do that, I think gave this team another level of confidence. But they don't want to take the hard road tomorrow. Right? And Roland and I have talked about this ad nauseum on our Switchbacks broadcast. When this team scores first at Widener Field, it's generally a wrap. That's how they dictate the terms. They get one early. So watch out for that tomorrow. If the Switchbacks score in the first 15 minutes, I'm not going to guarantee that they'll win the match, because there's still a lot of soccer to be played. But history will tell you that it will take a lot from Rhode Island to be able to get over on the Switchbacks if they're trying to rally from an early deficit. So if there was some keys for tomorrow, I think key number one is score an early goal. If you could do that, you'd be sitting in a really good spot. He talked about the attack that Rhode Island has. And yes, they're talented all around. That's why they're here. But it's Albert Dequa, it's J.J. Williams, and it's Noah Fusen. In Dequa and Williams, you have the third highest scoring duo in the league. But to me, I understand what James Chambers is saying. He's not going to throw everything at one guy. But the Switchbacks have done a very good job of identifying who is most vital to their opposition and marking him out. Whether it's with one guy, with two guys, they've been able to do that. To me, that's Noah Fusen. That's the guy, leads the league in assists. To key on J.J. Williams or to key on Albert Dequa, I don't think that's the right plan, because they could both equally hurt you. The guy that ties it all together, that's, to me, who the Switchbacks will put at the top of their list for this is the guy we got to take out of the game. And if they could do it with one guy, great. And a lot of times in these matches, the Switchbacks do find the playmaker rather than, because I've seen how many games opponents come in and they're like, we're going to mark out Damas. We're going to bracket him, one guy in front of him, one guy behind him. And Ronaldo's been a good playmaker overall, but he's primarily a goal scorer. And that's how a lot of teams have tried to attack Colorado Springs. And far be it from me to suggest something else, but I do watch this team closely. I think it's number 10. And hopefully Rhode Island's not listening, but to me, it's Zach Zandy. That's the guy you got to try to mark out. But Damas can certainly hurt you too. For the switchbacks, I find that they do normally try to mark out the guy that sets up the goal scorers. And I think part of the reason why they do that is because they have one of the best midfielders in the league in Speedy Williams. Because he doesn't get into the play going forward a lot, he's down the list, right? You talk about Zach Zandy, you talk about Ronaldo Damas, you talk about the wingers for the switchbacks. Speedy Williams has an argument to be the MVP of this team. And it's because of the defensive job he does on players like that, the main primary playmaker of an opposing team. That's the matchup that I'm going to be watching tomorrow very closely. And if James Chambers senses that maybe Speedy Williams isn't doing it by himself, then I would expect someone to start to shade over a little bit and help out. But Speedy Williams has been asked to do that time and time again this season, and he's delivered. But that's the matchup I'm watching for. And if the switchbacks can get the better of that matchup, that's the second box that they can check in addition to getting the early goal that I think will go a long way to them winning. But best laid plans, right? I can sit here and talk about what I think is going to happen, what I think should happen, and in a one-off, who knows? But as I see it, that's got to be the game plan for the Colorado Springs Switchbacks. A highly improbable matchup, which makes tomorrow all the more fascinating. The Western Conference had been conceded to New Mexico for months. And here the Switchbacks are. But they're a 2 seed, right? So it's not like they're the more surprising team. It's a little surprising that they're here. But Rhode Island and what they have been able to do, the teams they've been able to beat on this run in their first year of existence. We got 2 first-year head coaches. One is the first-year head coach of a first-year franchise. And here they are competing for a title. They feel a little Orange County circa, how many years ago was that? Ronaldo Damas was on that team. This Rhode Island team is very dangerous. And I think we are in for a great match tomorrow. Hopefully I'll see you out there at 10. If not, I will talk to you at 10 alongside Roland Vargas right here on Extra Sports 1300. Coming up next, Air Force Hockey is on a winning streak right now. How do they keep it going through the weekend against Bentley? Dave Toller joins me to discuss that next. Air Force hockey right now looking good. 4 straight wins, and tonight a great test of this winning streak and their winning form as they take on a Bentley team that has won 5 of their last 6 games. Our coverage will begin a little less than an hour from now, and one of the men you will hear on the call is Dave Toller, and Tolles joins me now. Tolles, how are you?
I'm doing great, Ryan. How are you doing?
Doing well. Excited about what I have seen from the Falcons. You have a closer view of them than I do. What has been the difference for them over the last couple of weeks?
Well, it's been a lot of things, really. I mean, obviously, you start with the goalie. I mean, Guy Blessing has been fantastic. He's won the Atlantic Hockey Goalie of the Week award 3 times, and his stats in conference games are just ridiculous. Leads the league in goals against average and saves percentage. He's playing great. And the guys in front of him are playing really good too. And, then you mix in last Saturday night, we scored a few more goals. Finally, we've really struggled to score some goals recently, but we got 4 of them last Saturday night. So I think everything right now is coming together. But like you said, this is going to be a good test for Air Force this weekend.
You mentioned Guy Blessing in the way that he's playing, but Frank has talked about how he's been their best player even when the numbers, haven't been as good. So I'm wondering, if we were splitting up the pie here, how much of the last couple of weeks is Guy Blessing raising his game and how much of it is the team around him? Because Coach Serratori liked the way that Guy was playing even when Air Force was on the wrong end of some lopsided scores.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, really.
Mm-hmm.
He has played good all year, but early in the season, we made some mistakes. We hung it out to dry a pretty good bit. And when you do that against teams like Minnesota and CC and UMass and Arizona State, those mistakes end up in the back of your net. And even in those games, watching those games, I thought we played pretty well overall, minus a couple of bad plays here and there. But those couple of mistakes, turned into 7-1 losses, 8-1 losses. And, the stats get really skewed at that point. But I think over the last few weeks, we've gotten into league play. The game that Air Force is playing is sound, is just a good word I use a lot. They're just playing a good, steady, sound game. And, when there's a breakdown, there's a shot that comes in, Blessing's there to make a save. And then as the game goes on, we find a goal here or there. That the top line has been doing most of the offensive production, and with them scoring and Blessing not giving up very many, you can end up going on a nice little run like we are right now.
Has there been one skater in particular that has stuck out to you over the last couple of weeks, like maybe as kind of a catalyst for the increased offensive production?
Yeah, the biggest difference, the first game against CC, that would have been 6 games ago.
Mm-hmm.
We made a change at the right wing and moved Brendan Gibbons up and moved Austin Schwartz down to the second line. And those 2 lines, because of that one little change, have really been playing good together. Gibbons leads our team in goals. He's got 6, and he's on that line with Cosentino and Nick Remisong. And they've produced a ton of points for us. And then Schwartz being on that second line with another speed and energy guy like Holt Oliphant, that line's really gotten going. And Mason McCormick was out. He was hurt for a while. He's come back. So I think those moves right there, probably the Gibbons to the top line has been the number one that's really helped that offense out.
Dave Toller, my guest. He and Jay Ritchie on the call. 5 o'clock puck drop, 5:05 if you want to be super specific about it, here on Extra Sports 1300. And then the same 2 teams tomorrow as well here on Extra Sports 1300. You've been with this team for longer than I've been covering it, but in the time I've been covering this team, we always wait for January to roll around. And it's like, that's when Air Force goes. And they've had some terrific second half, if you will. I get it's not quite the midway point of the season, but that holiday break certainly acts as a natural separation between 2 parts of the season. But the way they're playing now, Tolles, and the results they're getting, I mean, how much is this going to help them after the holidays to say, okay, if we go on this great run that we normally go on, awesome, but hey, now it's a run to the top of the standings. I mean, they're putting themselves in a tremendous position going into the month of December.
Yeah, they really are. And, I talked to Frank about this. I mean, he's even amazed a little bit, especially because we've got such a young team that has really matured quickly. And, I give a lot of that credit to our captains, Clay Cosentino and Austin Schwartz are two guys that got together in the off season and said, hey, we need to set the tempo. And we've had good captains the last few years, Luke Rowe, Luke Robinson last season. Those guys helped kind of lay that foundation. And then, Clay and Austin come in and, just I think their leadership, their calm and cool demeanor has really helped this young team because there's a lot of young guys in the lineup and to come together and to play, just good, solid hockey at this point, this early has been pretty amazing to watch.
So this Bentley team playing extremely well right now as well. What is the primary concern when you look at tonight's opposition?
Everything. They are good in every area. They've got a good, big veteran goalie. They lead the league in scoring offense. They lead the league in scoring defense. Their power play is in the top 20 in the country. Their penalty kill is in the top 10 in the country. They're getting it done everywhere. And, they're 7-4-1, and their 4 losses, 3 of them have been by 1 goal, 2 of them against teams that are ranked in New Hampshire and UMass. So, I mean, they're just doing everything really well right now. And, but on the other side, I think if Air Force plays the same way that we played the last couple of weeks, I think it's going to be a great series, probably a low-scoring series as well.
Well, a wise man once informed me via his weekly game notes that Air Force is 6-1 in 1-goal games, and everything you're telling me speaks to the idea that we may have a couple of 1-goal games. So I like the Falcons' chances in that regard. Tolles, really appreciate the time and the insight. Have a great couple of calls with Jay this weekend.
Sounds great. Thanks, Ryan.
You bet. That's Dave Toller, one half of our outstanding Air Force hockey broadcast team. Again, Air Force and Bentley. I believe they're both the Falcons. Well, I know one team is. I know that for a fact. 4:30, our coverage begins, so I'll lead you right into Jay and Dave, and then puck drop will be just after 5 o'clock here on Extra Sports 1300, and then come right back tomorrow afternoon, shortly after, we hope, the Colorado Springs Switchbacks celebrate a title, and Air Force will be in action again against Bentley. That game a little bit earlier, 2 o'clock in the Mountain Time Zone for interested parties. Speaking of hockey, got a text in from the 719. Based on what I was talking about earlier and the Avs and the Caps, not a lot changing. I meant more on the Avs side of things. I guess I have, my general take is that I look at the Avs and how different they are. And I was remarking that they're not that much different. Yes, for the Capitals to not have Ovi is certainly significant for them. But to be fair to Washington, it didn't look like they missed him. They look just as dangerous without him. And the way that Georgiev was playing, I mean, I would be a little bit worried if Ovi set up in his little office there by the circle, but I don't know. He was outstanding. There aren't many teams in the NHL that would have beaten Alexander Georgiev last night. But credit to Washington. I thought they played pretty much the same game, and it was a difficult game. and they take away time and space. And when a team is able to do that, you need guys. We talk so much about the Avs and time and space and how important it is, but it's not that either they're given space or not, right? Sometimes you have to take that time and space. And I think the second goal last night was an example of that. The first goal was just that was basically an own goal, right? That was a gift from Washington, that first goal that the Avs scored on the power play. But the second one, the game winner, that was Cale Makar doing what Cale Makar does. Remember that goal he had a couple of years ago against Chicago that won the game? Where he's skating back towards the boards, and then on a dime, he pivots, beats his defender, gets to the net, and puts a sick move on the goalie to score. Now, last night's goal, and he didn't even score the goal, it was Miles Wood off the deflection, but the display of skating ability from Cale Makar was not what it was on that goal against Chicago, though, few years ago. But it was an example of the Avs taking time and space. He was being smothered by Lars Eller. I think Lars Eller was hugging him. And Cale Makar along the boards just stops, pivots, and then gets free. And what's that old hockey adage? Good things happen when you crash the net. Well, that's what Miles Wood did. Cale Makar put the puck in on net. Miles Wood was there to put it in. So it's not always, hey, is this opponent going to give the Avs the time and space that they need? Sometimes you got to take it. And they have two guys that do that as well as anyone in the NHL, and Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar. If you don't give them time and space, they can take it from you. And on what proved to be the game winner last night, Cale Makar did that. Amazing skating ability there from Cale, Nonsense, or Makar. Avs win 5 of 6. Air Force tonight going for 5 in a row against Bentley. The hockey's pretty good. The football's pretty good in this state as well. Saw this today. Maybe you have seen it as well. The Week 16 game for the Broncos and Chargers has now been flexed into a Thursday night, which is new. They just gave themselves, the NFL gave themselves the ability to flex games into Thursday night or out of Thursday night, as it were, just last year. Didn't feel the need to. This year they do. So they have taken Cincinnati and Cleveland out of that Thursday night. And now it's going to be the Chargers and the Broncos. And the thing about it is you have to get essentially permission from the teams to say, yeah, we'll do it. So some people were wondering today, why would the Broncos do this? Give themselves a shorter week to prepare for the Chargers. And there's every reason to believe, the way those two teams are going, that could be for playoff positioning in the AFC. I don't see a way that either is going to fall off before then, certainly. So I think they're going to be close. Chargers could still potentially be ahead. So why a game of that magnitude, divisional game, all that kind of stuff, would you voluntarily waive your rights to say, no, we're not taking a short week? Sorry. I think there are a couple reasons. One small reason, I think you want to give. Remember Christmas a couple years ago? Remember what that was all about? That disaster for the Denver Broncos. I know it was a different regime, but look at last year, the Chiefs. Christmas is not a great time to be playing. And I know their game wasn't going to be on Christmas, but I look at it, and if you can move up the game and give your team the weekend or sometime during the weekend, maybe Sunday, to say, hey, do your Christmas thing on that day. That way we can get back to work and lock in and focus on the next game. Because the next game could have even more consequence to it. The next game's the Bengal game. Right? So while the Broncos could potentially get themselves the 6th seed by beating the Chargers, and why would you move up that game, give yourself less time to prepare? But now you get more time to prepare for a more consequential game, potentially, if the Bengals bounce back and keep winning. The Broncos could be playing the Bengals to essentially eliminate them and clinch the 7th seed, depending on what happens with Indianapolis. So there's more. Both games are consequential. The game against Cincinnati has more dire consequences for the Denver Broncos, and it's also a team that they are less familiar with than the Chargers. They know the Chargers. So if there's going to be an opponent where they're like, you know what, maybe we would like as much time as possible, but if you're asking us to choose a divisional opponent, we may not need as much time to get ready. So I think a little bit about the holiday, a lot of bit about the consequence of those two games, and why I think it's right for Sean Payton to want to pour more into the Cincinnati game. But how about that? Just that alone, that the Denver Broncos have been chosen by the NFL overlords to get flexed into primetime. That's a nice change of pace, isn't it? 719-24-7. 13-13. Broncos, in the meantime, will take on the Raiders. If you're looking to potentially wager on Sunday's contest, may I suggest Circa Sports Colorado. It's now the only app I use to place my sports bets. And the reason for it, they have created a great experience for the real bettor. It's not for the casuals. They have the lowest holds on large market bets like futures, golf tournaments. The lines are as good as you're going to find anywhere. And if you are fortunate enough to start racking up the wins, just know that Circa's not going to turn around and limit you based on your winnings. They don't do that. So do what I did. Download the Circa Sports Colorado app for a little while. Just test it out. Compare, contrast, price shop. And I think you'll end up where I am. Got only one betting app on my phone. It's Circa Sports Colorado. Must be 21 or older and present in Colorado to bet. If you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Coming up next, why last night was the perfect result for the Denver Broncos. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Friday. We are streaming live on our social media platforms at XTRA Sports 1300, Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, Air Force Hockey taking on Bentley. I will be heading up at that juncture to the Air Force Academy to call Air Force women's basketball against UC San Diego. That game, if you are interested, is at 6:30 over on 740 KVOR. Sunday, the Denver Broncos go up against the Raiders in a start of a 3-game set I would like to call trap games. All 3 of these games are trap games for the Denver Broncos. They're games they should win. Looking forward, perhaps. A couple of players mentioned that they'd be lying if they didn't think about what was in front of them, what was possible from this season. All 3 of these games are trap games. Unless they lose one and then the next one is no longer a trap game. That's the way it works. But what happened last night in Cleveland is exactly what Sean Payton and you as a Broncos fan should want. A Pittsburgh Steelers team that people were discussing, are they among the elite of the elite in the AFC? Virtually no one picking the Cleveland Browns to win, except I think Ryan Fitzpatrick did. But he's a little bit of, he's a Harvard grad. So obviously he knows better than all of us. And I made the comment yesterday that the Steelers should win that game, and I'm not wrong. They should have. But I thought they would win. And they didn't. They got Jameised. Or Nick Chubb happened. Or Myles Garrett happened. However you want to put it, it's the perfect result for Sean Payton. He even mentioned it in passing today, but I promise you, he brought that up. And it was the only game on last night. How many Broncos players at least saw the result, if not watched the game in its entirety? It is the perfect result a couple of days before the Broncos are taking on a team that they should have no issue with beating. Any given Sunday, right? If you could throw out the any given Sunday line, not the line from any given Sunday, but the idea on any given Sunday, last night was perfect. Because the Browns, with nothing to play for, their season has been an unmitigated disaster. And yet, against a team that many were doting on, in the last 24, 48, 72 hours, and the Browns won. That's the game you want the Broncos to be thinking about when they go to Vegas. That could be them. It was also the perfect result if you're a Broncos fan because Russell Wilson held on to the ball way too long, got sacked way too much. But it's fine. Everybody's over it. Everybody's moved on, right? So outside of the Broncos perhaps overlooking the Raiders, what should be in the old game plan? Interestingly enough, you know who the Raiders' 6-game losing streak started with? The Broncos. Raiders haven't won since. To me, there are a few things that I'm looking at for Sunday. One, Broncos got to start better. They needed that Pat Surtain pick six, 100-yard return for a touchdown to swing that game, a game that the Raiders came out stronger than they did. This should not be the case again on Sunday. The way that the Broncos are playing, the way that the Raiders are playing, the Broncos got to do a better job of getting out of the gate and getting off to an early lead, because going against a team, this was the mistake the Steelers made. They never put the Browns out of it. And as long as you have what's the line that Jameis Winston's been using? Something about belief. He says so many things. Utmost belief. That can't be it. Anyway, the Steelers let the Browns hang around. They got confidence. They saw the ability to potentially win that game. Broncos need to take that away from the Raiders on Sunday. Get off to a good start. Don't depend on some huge defensive play to swing the game in your direction. Come out and play like you have in the last 3 games. Well, last 2. But over the last 3 games, the Denver Broncos are in the top 5 in the league in first half scoring. Over the last 3 weeks. They have been starting games better. They have had better first halves. They've been putting themselves in better positions. Again, not the Ravens game eventually, but Kansas City, Atlanta, they certainly did that. They need to do it again against the Raiders. Secondly, they need to do a better job against Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers tore them up last time they played. And I think as they were trying to compensate for Brock Bowers running all over them, they then had Jacoby Myers pop up. You look at some of the numbers, Gardner Minshew threw multiple picks, including the pick 6. That was an absolutely horrendous decision with the football. But you look at the numbers, Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers had really good games against the Broncos. So have a better plan to slow down Brock Bowers, because you know that's where the Raiders are going to be looking first and foremost. And something that happened in that Raider game that was interesting to me. Javonte Williams had a very good game on the ground, running the football. Had a couple of backs that ran the football pretty effectively. Bo Nix ran for a touchdown. But Javonte Williams also had, let me look at the number here, 60. No, he had 61 yards rushing, 50 yards receiving. Marvin Mims in his new role with this Denver Broncos has kind of come into focus over the last couple of weeks. I wonder if this is going to be another Marvin Mims game. Put him in the backfield, throw the screen passes. They could just as well try to do that with Javonte Williams, but given the emergence of Marvin Mims in this role of his, which isn't a joker. Sean Payne was asked today about the joker role. Marvin Mims not a joker. I think he said something like he doesn't have a joker tattoo, but he's in the club. I don't know. The metaphors from Sean Payton. But I wonder if this could be another game where we're looking at Marvin Mims, again, not on a lot of plays, right? He only got 13 plays against Atlanta, but he made the most of them. I wonder if there are going to be a few big Marvin Mims plays, given how the Broncos were able to gain a lot of yards in the passing game out of the backfield. And the progress that the Broncos have made, I look back on some of those numbers, like Lil Jordan Humphrey had 2 catches. Cortland Sutton had 2 catches. Certainly the passing offense and some of these receivers have been more prolific in the time since they played the Raiders. So as good as that game turned out to be for the Denver Broncos, this one could be better. And we certainly know that they're not walking into a hostile environment. That was a big conversation today. Raiders do not have a home field advantage. So no reason for the Denver Broncos to not go in, start fast, and put this Raiders team away. That is a sign of respect for where I think the Broncos are right now, that I don't think they should have to mess around with the Raiders. They should jump out to an early lead and just put them away, because the Raiders will go away. Or at the very least, if you put them behind and they start airing it out, then that's when Pat Surtain and Riley Moss can eat. Right? They're going to make mistakes. This team is in a really bad spot right now. And the Denver Broncos should be able to do everything to keep them there. But if the Broncos win this game on Sunday decisively, maybe, give a little shout out to Jameis and the boys. Because that's a perfect example for Sean Payton to point to a couple of days before this game and say, hey, if you guys don't bring the requisite execution and effort level, look what will happen to you. I do expect the weather to be better, though, in Vegas than it was in Cleveland last night. It looks miserable. It looked absolutely miserable last night. And am I the only one that doesn't enjoy watching snow games? Like, there's this big conversation about, well, I know the players don't like it, but I love watching it. I actually don't like watching it. I mean, I did, but I'm just saying, like, I could have easily enjoyed this game just the same if Nick Chubb was running on a clean football field. It's not as aesthetically pleasing as some people say it is. For me, anyway. I mean, it got so bad that Al Michaels couldn't even tell who was making the plays. That's how bad it was last night with the snow in Cleveland.
Not too bad. Not too bad. And that's your artist.
And you could just tell that he was like a step behind the play. His normal pace of when he would call out who made a catch. Like, I remember Jerry Jeudy, that catch he made near the sideline on that drive that Jameis ended up trying to pull Saquon.
I did too, but
like, there was a beat that Al Michaels took before he said Jerry Jeudy made the catch. He can't see. He's at the stadium and he can't see. Jameis Winston at times was like squinting to try and see how either team, and both teams got up and down the field late in that game. That's what made it super entertaining. It looked at times like they could barely see, and yet the Browns go down and score. Russell Wilson throws that long pass to Austin, and the Browns come back down and score with Nick Chubb. Mike Tomlin eating snow off of his beard. Like, I don't like it.
check.
When I say I don't like snow, I'm consistent. I don't like being in snow, and I don't like watching things in the snow. But that turned out to be a far more entertaining football game than I was expecting. And just getting Jameis Winston on that Amazon set at the end of the game. Just that dude is unique. I listen to him talk for hours and I will giggle the entire time. Everything he says is funny, even when he's not trying to be.
Check.
But congrats to the Browns. That was good. Myles Garrett was like getting emotional after the game. He outplayed TJ Watt. Who's the best defensive player in the league now? And I'm turning it. I turn to my TV screen and there's Jameis Winston and he's mimicking Nick Chubb running into the end zone in slow motion. It's like he is so unintentionally hilarious. Although I wonder if could it be that Jameis Winston has reached a point that Nikola Jokic has where he knows what people want from him, so he plays into it? Like, I know Jameis Winston has always been a little off, right? The eating the W's. He's always been a little peculiar. But I wonder if now Jameis Winston has gone to the point where, like, it's a bit. Like, he's laying it on thicker because he knows that's what people love. Same with Nikola Jokic and this whole idea that he's just a clock puncher. He just shows up at 9, leaves at 5, doesn't care about basketball any other hour of the day. And yet everything you hear behind the scenes is this dude works insanely hard. Been saying for a long time, Nikola Jokic in this whole I don't care stuff is a bit. Because he knows that people get a kick out of it. And allows them to mess around a little bit. I wonder if we've gotten to that point with Jameis Winston. Because everyone is just so eager to hear him speak. Gotta give the people what they want. And Jameis did. On the football field and off of it. 719-247-1313. One more break. Air Force hockey at the bottom of the hour here on Extra Sports 1300. Last reminder of the day, Take a Turkey to Work Day going on until 6 o'clock tonight. We're helping Care and Share Food Bank of Southern Colorado gather up frozen turkeys to distribute to families in need in Southern Colorado. You could drop off your turkey at any participating King Soopers location in Colorado Springs or Pueblo. My friends and colleagues Ray Dominguez and Richard Randall are at the Mark Scheffel and Constitution location. You want to stop by there and say hi, tell them that I told you to say hi. But there are other ways to help out. And for those, you could go to XTRA Sports 1300.com. Dan. I wanted to get, because tonight after Air Force hockey, the Nuggets take on the Dallas Mavericks. Now, tonight's game might be a little bit devoid of stars. Luka Doncic is out, like officially. He's hurt. Nikola Jokic is still questionable with these personal reasons that he is out. Although the TV, I think he's the TV play-by-play guy. He might be the radio play-by-play guy. He's a play-by-play guy for the Mavericks. Mark Followell tweeted out last night, and this is the last thing we've really heard. Nikola Jokic is questionable for Mavs and Nuggets tomorrow night. Been away with his wife and missed the last 3 games as she gives birth to their second child. Now, that was the rumor going around. But you wonder, didn't Michael Malone mention the name of Nikola's brother, Stranya, the other day? Like, I hope. Anyway, I didn't want to speculate. Katie Winge said that there's nothing to be, really worried about. So, could be the birth of a child. And remember how upset Nikola Jokic got when somebody in a press conference asked him about taking his daughter to the zoo, and he was like floored. He couldn't believe that people knew that. And he was like, how is that? Well, because somebody videotaped him and he got very upset about it. So if this is the birth of a child, anybody else, I would say that this would be something widely announced and there would be social media posts about it from the athlete as well as the team, and the coach would talk about it. Because it's a joyous occasion, right? If it was something, serious and not positive at all, that's when I would expect there to be a little bit of secrecy around it, right? But it's Nikola Jokic. So even a joyous occasion that the Nuggets, Michael Malone, would love to share with everybody. Guess what? Nikola's a dad for the second time. This is so awesome. I don't know if Nikola Jokic would like that. So whenever he gets back, we'll see what's up. But he's listed as questionable. So, but ESPN today, which the game is on ESPN sent out a graphic that had Nikola Jokic and did not have Luka. I believe it was Klay Thompson and one other, Kyrie. They're airing the game. If it was just, hey, how do we promote Mavericks Nuggets, it would be Jokic and Doncic. But it seems very intentional that they did not have Luka because he's hurt. But they did include Nikola Jokic. So I say all that to say, I don't know if he's playing. And if he's not going to be nearly as interesting. But still kind of interesting. You have Clay, you have Kyrie, Jamal Murray coming off the performance the Nuggets had the other night. I am interested to see how they follow it. But that will be right after Air Force Hockey right here on Extra Sports 1300. Speaking of which, that's coming up in just about a minute. So let me leave you with this. A lot of sports going on this weekend. If you're looking to bet on the games, may I suggest the Circa Sports Colorado app. You know, I saw another commercial today for another sports book that's offering some amazing free bet offers. But what happens after that? I mean, the app has to kind of stand alone after they bribe you to download and subscribe, and that's kind of the niche that Circa Sports Colorado has carved out. Their lines are their promo, and that's something that they have to sustain. They have to sustain having the best lines, the lowest holds on futures bet, and not limiting players based on the wins. That's the bet they're making, is that you won't find a better experience with the sports betting app. And if you ever have a problem, just know there are real human beings, the same human beings behind Circa Sportsbook, the physical form in Vegas, are behind this app as well, and they'll be there to help you out. So download the app today. Must be 21 years or older and present in Colorado to bet. If you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. That's it for me. I'm heading to the Academy. Air Force women's basketball against UC San Diego at 6:30, but coming up right now, Air Force red hot, Bentley almost as red hot. Jay Ritchie, Dave Toller on the call right now.